Good afternoon, folks, and welcome into the Takeup. Today we have the thread break. Multimedia matters, print and applique. All right, folks. Well, the first thing you're going to notice right now is that I am currently not joined by Joe Kramar. So, if that's what you were hoping for, we are hoping that will be able to be happening shortly. That he will be able to get in, and we'll have him in to discuss the stuff that he wanted to discuss with us. And certainly, I'm hoping we can kind of carry on either way. But unfortunately, so far we've been having some technical difficulties getting Joe in. So if we can get Joe in, I will absolutely bring him in. I'm very happy to have him in talking about print and applique, especially because this is really where he is located. This is in his wheelhouse. He's done some really interesting development with stuff that I cannot wait to show you as far as distressed applique and screen print. However, even if that doesn't happen, I'll be able to talk to you guys about the stuff I was going to talk about in a more corporate way, where I've done some interesting things with custom printed applique. And you may have seen me talk about these before, but some custom sublimated applique stuff where I talk a little bit about prep, things like that, where we prepped the art, handled this custom colored applique, and then did that as a combination heat press on twill and then standard applique process for a corporate client. Also, I've got some other interesting multimedia stuff I've done and some tools and Embrilliance that some people have not seen or have not noticed are part of the possibilities from that platform. So we have other stuff we can talk about. Like I said, we are efforting to get Joe in. He may well be able to get in. If we can hear him, we'll bring him in a moment. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and start talking to you guys ahead of time and just say, hey, you guys know, as far as you are longtime Takeup listeners or watchers, then you know that I like to talk to the people who are here live. So if you are here live, by all means, please jump in the comments, talk to us, and understand that if you're not here live, what I usually do is this. Banner is up. When the banner comes back up, that's when we will stop with talking to everybody. You'll see me bring up comments and chat with everybody in between the here and there. We have a little time to socialize with the group who shows up live. After that, you can go ahead and head over, fast forward until you see the banner again, and that's when we're back to the content. But with everybody here, I'd like to say hi to the reciprocators who have shown up. We've got Frank coming in saying good evening all. So good evening, Frank. Happy to have you here. We've got Scott from Sunrise coming in saying happy Friday to everybody. Happy Friday. Have everybody talking to each other. Doug Sobel is in. We've got Barb from Minnesota Custom Made saying hi to Eric and myself. Myself and Joe, actually, Eric and Joe. So good afternoon, everyone from North Central Minnesota. Happy Friday. We've got everybody talking to each other, which I love. Doug saying hi to everybody. Barb saying hi to everybody. Everybody's chatting. We got DJ Kev in saying hello, everyone. Hey, DJ Kev. Happy to have you in as well. But yeah, good afternoon to Lisa Shaw, my compatriot over at Embrilliance. We're working on some excellent stuff ourselves today. So good stuff. And greetings from Colorado. Greetings from Pennsylvania. I don't want to say unfortunately, that's not very nice, but greetings from Pennsylvania. That's just how I am for today. We've got everybody chatting with each other. We've got Brian Bailey, Creative and Brilliance, in saying hey also. Hi, Brian. And by the way, everybody keep talking to each other, keep enjoying each other's company. Love to have you in. It looks like we might have Joe in the background. I'm going to try and bring him in live. We're going to see what happens. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's the way these live things go, folks. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Mr. Kramar.
Okay.
You're here.
If we didn't have bad luck, right? We wouldn't have any at all. So here we are.
Hey, it happens from time to time. You know, it
Yeah.
happens from time to time. I'm glad to see you here because we got like I keep telling everybody a topic that is absolutely near and dear to your heart. You know, print and applique, and honestly, applique in general, but print and applique multimedia is something that you are absolutely versed in, schooled in, and could school the rest of us in with all the experience you have. So I'm glad to have you in, sir.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me again, and I definitely apologize for the emotional roller coaster that Eric and I were on the last 15, 20 minutes. Like, can you hear me now? And it's like mic not working, camera working, camera not working, mic working. So I threw that computer out the window. So I'm going to deal with that after the podcast. But hopefully I didn't hit any neighbors on the way out. But anyway, so we're So what I really like to share too is that before I really got super deep into the embroidery applique side of it, obviously we all kind of get our start with something, and I think at the time doing image seps and back when the transition between going to Rubylith cuts, and then like we got our first Zante image setter, so we can
Oh
make
yeah, yeah.
translucencies right on vellum.
Boy,
And
been there,
then
done that.
we had to like choke and trap. I mean, that's a whole podcast right there, just to explain like what all that is. But this is before you could do SEPs, right,
Yeah,
with an inkjet a
yeah,
printer and butt registration. And all this really means is that the vellums would shrink as you'd run them through the plates, and
yep,
the vellum was transparent enough for ultraviolet light to pass through when you're making screens, but the ink that was on it was not. In fact, they even had like a spray that would like make it darker, I think,
yeah,
right?
yeah. There was, yeah,
And then you would go ahead and make your plates, your positives plates from that. And anyway, so I had to tell you all that so I could tell you that, then we got I should say, as my career uh, went on, and foolish companies continued to trust me with with this next project, we would start to do other things, and those other things are, okay, how can we possibly take screen print and incorporate it into all this fancy applique that we're doing. And
yeah.
so Eric and I talk at length of this because it's such a large subject to bite off, because there's so many options, and there's so many combinations, and I'm like, well, let's do a cast where we just at least start talking
Yeah.
about this, because I feel like if you're already scared of applique, this is just going to make you run for the hills, because it's how can you how can you accurately print, you know accurate enough, I should say, to
Yeah.
actually get any kind of print. It doesn't have to be screen print. It could be dice up.
No, no.
I mean, it could be. I mean, the new DTF. I haven't done anything yet with DTF, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. You know.
Well, I've seen people
Yeah.
doing DTF. In fact, recently I saw somebody doing a sample. They were doing a hat where they printed DTF direct and then they just stitched right on top of it. This guy,
Why
and I
not?
can't remember who this was, and I apologize to the guy who put this out there because I don't remember where where you were from, and I lost your video. I was going to ask if I could incorporate it. This guy went ahead and kind of printed real plain single color DTF, and it looked like a crack pattern in a wall, and he kind of had the Kool-Aid Man popping out of it, and he stitched the Kool-Aid Man on top. Now, he did the thing that everybody does, which is when you first start, he thought, I can just drop this on there. I'm going to set my design right on top, and it's going to run, and it'll register. He had a perfect cut line
Yeah.
hole where the embroidery should go, and it was way off. Now, that's fine. That happens. He didn't make any attempts to register it. So if you guys are wondering what I'm talking about here, registration just means one layer registering to another, meaning that the layers land where they're supposed to. And that's where that was hard for him. He kind of did this thing where the print, he stopped as he's doing it, because he did this really live, quick and dirty video. He's like, I probably should just bled that entirely under the embroidery. And I'm like, yep. So there's two ways you could do registration. I'm just going to put this out there as one of the
Yep.
kind of technical things to think about. There's really perfect registration, which means you have to have something like an indicator somewhere in your print that lets you know where that should be. Or you have a print and you have a design that has enough slop in it that you don't actually need to register very tightly. And then you have sloppy registration, which I know it sounds terrible. That's what we used to call it, though, a sloppy registration print, where you intend for it not to necessarily land perfectly. You have print all over that can accept whatever that embroidery is. And if it's a little off one direction or another, it doesn't really matter to the overall execution. So those are two kind of things that happen. Applique is a different matter, though, because as we know, we have to be inside the cut. We have to be inside the part that's remaining. And if we're trying to have some sort of border or an edge, now we have to decide, does it matter if our print is within that edge or if a certain part of it is? And even then we can do, there's kind of, once again, the precise version where we have something that has to land exactly so, or you have the sloppy version where we can have things like a full bleed with a pattern print, and the pattern print can bleed over and doesn't have to be precise, can be under the edge and can move around a little bit. So those
Yep.
are the kind of two types of multimedia registration that we've handled.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And I'll just tell our viewers right now. Yeah, I vote for the second one. I'm always going to vote for
Yep.
uh, being able to put print on something and understand that if this is off a quarter inch, Lord forbid. I mean, preferably 16th or an eighth. But if it's off a full quarter inch, it's not going to ruin your design. It's not going to ruin your day. It's just part of it, and you don't want to build that into your art so tight that, like, for example, I know that a lot of graphic artists that are not embroidery folks they don't understand fabric movement and distortions and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so they'll immediately gravitate towards putting, let's say, a printed circular patch, and then they want to do that inset outline in ink, and then let the stitches tack that in. And I'm just like, you can't do that. You are asking the eye to look for everything that's wrong with that patch from the
Yeah.
get-go, from the absolute beginning. So you want to use patterns, and artifacts and things that if, again, the registration's not off, because you still have the analog of a human placing that thing
You do.
down. So you have to kind of go from there. So I sent Erich this really crazy project back when I was working
Yeah.
with Jeremy with Amb3r Creative. We did this crazy project for, I think it was like jerseys or something like that. But it was this crazy project where we're like, hey, can we do this? Denko is brand that Jeremy's launching, and he's like, hey, how nuts can we get with this? And I'm just like, dude, we can go super nuts with this simple concept. And so we focus specifically on printing a big 3 and an 8
Mhm.
vintage applique style, meaning that we did it in multiple layers of canvas. And the reason why we did it in 2 layers of canvas is because we really want the blooming frayed edge to really, we're trying to get as much credit as we possibly can, right, for the wash.
Yeah.
And then of course, we're not just printing a simple screen print on top of this thing. Uh, we had our artist Angelo go through and actually hand draw, the paint in different levels, so that I think we ended up separating it out either 1 or 2 colors, but we did it as a diffusion dither pattern instead of a halftone pattern,
Mhm.
because unfortunately, a halftone pattern, no matter how fine you go, still gives the illusion that a machine had printed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we went to a diffusion dither because the main difference, if I were to coin like a small description, is that a diffusion dither is the same size of dot, but closer or further away to achieve the gradient. Okay, as opposed to halftones where the dots are defined in space, but they're
Mhm.
larger or smaller to define the gradient, and that's what makes it look
Yeah.
kind of machine looking. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
we went as far as we possibly could within, max that budget out to show that. But anyway, we'll get to those samples.
Well, I've actually
Yeah,
I have the entirety of this really great gallery that Joe showed me that I can put up on screen, and we'll talk about that.
yeah,
We've got a video that we can play kind of behind us that
yeah,
shows it. I don't remember how much of how much of the process the video has in it, so we could also kind of talk about that while it's running. But we have all of that
absolutely.
available to us. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, to kind of see how far you have to go to not look mechanical.
Yeah,
I'm going to say the stuff I was doing, we did a lot of desktop sublimation, and that will be important in a moment because I'm going to talk to you about the prices of
yeah,
sublimation and prints and how that goes. Desktop is actually much more expensive. If you're doing really small run sublimation, much more expensive than wide format. And for us, it was totally mechanical. Absolutely didn't matter at all. We weren't trying to get this interesting texture. So for us, the real problem was all about that registration and all about color management too. That was really hard because we were doing like Pantone company colors, and that was actually not only hard, it was nigh impossible and didn't turn out exactly how we would want it to. Turned out okay. But in the end, it was like, wow, that was where the difficulty was for us with sublimation. Sublimation is, of course, going to have the dots that any sort of digital print has, but they're minute in comparison to screen printing, halftone dots. So they're just not as visible, certainly. But the color combinations, the color management was an absolute bear, and I've got that as well. But I don't know if you'd rather show. Do you want to bring up necessarily like the? Do you want to go through the images first? Do you want to go to the video? What would you like to do as far as your
well,
project?
you know what I think we should probably do is if we talk over the video.
All right.
I think we can. I think it's gonna pose enough
Enough questions to kind of get us
questions
going. All right.
to kick this off. Then we can go to the images, I think, right, in
Yeah,
post,
we've got
and
both.
start breaking that
Yeah.
down.
Let me go ahead and
Yeah,
try this out. This is
yeah,
something that I haven't done in EV Mux before, folks. So if it doesn't turn out, it won't turn out. We'll just do something else. But I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot. It should start playing automatically for us. And if not, let me get that rolling. Let's see if I can get it to start up there. All right.
there we go. Yep.
Okay. So
So
you've seen the screen printing process, folks.
yep. So this is us trying to figure out the reduction of the ink and try to figure out where that happy medium was going to be, because I think we had a 355. We had a pretty high mesh screen on this one, and so you could see here we push hard, and we're not even penetrating, all of the topography of that fabric.
Hmm.
So we went through and reduced it even more. And of course, my buddy John's like, dude, I pushed hard. I'm like, well, let me try it. So here I am pushing hard. So this is a blotting technique that we use with the shop rag. And the reason why we use this technique is because it again, it helps knock down the hard edges of the dots. So it
Mm.
looks a lot more like if it was actually hand painted. And then of course we bring it, you can see how many, we printed so many of these samples trying to figure out where the happy spot was going to be. And of course eventually we found it, so we're just doing one pass, one flood, so we can keep track of where that happy point is. But you could see how much definition we're getting out of this, and just like you would actually with a brush, with a acrylic paint or some sort of paint, you can see the
Yeah,
highs
yeah.
and the lows. You could see where it didn't fall into the fabric all the way.
Hmm.
So we found a nice happy medium as to where, there you go, there's a good shot of the diffusion dip. They're just tiny little dots to make up this figure. So um, the next process here is I needed to cut out the base layer. And since the
Mm.
base layer doesn't have ink on it, I cut a stencil out. And the specific purpose of the stencil is to show me where I want the screen print to line up. Because again, our artist, when he painted this, I didn't need him to color inside the lines. I told him, no, you could totally just go right outside these lines, because I'm just going to line it up later, so that when you remove the stencil out of the way, you can go ahead and do this process, which is to laser cut it out, and then you're left with this. So if you look closely, you'll probably see here in a couple shots, the base layer is just a tiny bit, like, it's got a little bit more meat around the edges than the top layer, and I did that on purpose.
So you've got just a very small amount of maybe reveal or edge
Yeah,
on the bottom
correct,
layer for this two-layer
correct.
applique. Got it.
And the base layer doesn't have all the nicks and holes and all the little fancy stuff there on top. The base layer just needs to be there to really add fray around the outsides of it. This is going in on a sweatshirt anyway, so it didn't need
Awesome.
to be super pliable.
You can also
But
see you've got a light print that's going under the edge of the
I
applique.
did,
That's
I
nice.
did, yeah. And I think that's just like a 2% tinted clear. So it'd be
Yeah, yeah.
like a chino base with like maybe 1 or 2%. One of those like black, editions of the
Hmm.
palette, and just mix it up, in the screen. I don't even think we mixed it and in its own bucket. I think we just mixed it in the screen because it was
Wow,
just
yeah,
a
yeah.
sample anyway. But so yeah, you would do your tracing stitch, your guide stitch as per usual, and then just lay the whole mess on there,
Hmm.
um, and then tack it down. But yeah, so I'm using a light here because sometimes when you're really trying to be coy, right, with your tracing stitch, it's really nice to be able to see the penetrations if you put a light,
Yeah, underneath the
up in
piece.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially if you're going fast. I've outfitted quite a few embroidery machines with semi-permanent lights up
Okay.
down in there. So
So under the
I'm all,
tubular workspace, that's very cool.
yeah, just put it in there and let it roll. So this is this is a part where I'm trying to film with one hand and place applique with the other, and you would think after all these years I'd get good at it, but I have not. It's that was the reason for my meta glasses purchase, so I can work
There you go.
with two hands. But I want to show you how the base layer sticks out a little bit right here before we get to
Yeah.
tacking it down. But anyway, the rest of it is going to be, tack stitches, repair stitches, and things like that. But at least wanted to show, yeah, this is when you really want to get mad scientist about it. This is one of the ways to do it, with a lot of hand stitch effects as well. Because yeah, see here I'm stopping there at that distress part, and then I'm going to bean back the way that I ran out.
Yeah.
Um, things like that. You could just, I love this video because it really shows how much of that distressing, and how much of like this probably was double beaning or 5-pass beaning, 5 or 7
Yeah.
pass beaning through this to really like hammer it, with Tex 40 sewing thread. um
Well, what I would love to point out to people too, you see that there are decorative stitches that are going on with the tack down because you digitized this manually. This is not an applique stock position or tack down stitch.
Correct.
You have digitized this manually.
Yes. I
Yeah,
mean, you start with the perfect vector line to give you a
of course.
guideline,
Yeah.
but when you also put kind of behind your perfect line and maybe an image of the raster or
Hmm.
whatever image you're using, coming in originally out of Illustrator, then you could kind of see where those repairs are, and you can easily adapt. Okay, I'm coming over to this corner here and there's a bunch of repairs, so I'm gonna, without having to like walk my stitching, I'm just gonna use the bean I'm already using to just hammer, just let it rip, because
Hmm.
the thing about a bean, even if you have a lot of passes, is it doesn't have that same density issue as like you're trying to put several fills on top of each other, and you can start to
Yeah.
hear the penetration tension of the needle like complaining to you, and then things start
Yeah.
bouncing, and you don't really have that with a bean. You can pound it, man. Like,
Well,
that's a
and you're
good thing
doing
about
light
it.
offsets. You're
Yeah,
offsetting slightly from the previous run, but you're really just tacking lines back and forth. When you're
correct.
digitizing this stuff, you really are you're scribbling, and I mean you can do it by hand if you want to do.
Hmm.
Well, now I'm going to go ahead and pause this because we
Yeah,
also have some of these other, as you're calling them repair stitches. I just want to make it
yeah,
clear to everybody who doesn't know any better. These are decorative repairs made to look as if you've got your, ancient applique that someone has tried to keep on the garment over and over years. So yeah, we've got repair stitches like that. I do have a
yeah.
quick comment, and it'll overlay our faces. I don't have it laid out for
Okay,
comments,
no
so that's all
problem.
right. DJ Kev says, over top of our heads, how many layers of canvas is that? Was that two?
So that's a total of two. One is
All right.
printed on top with the distressed. Well, I just do using distressed loosely, but the all the
Yes.
little
Yeah.
nicks and holes and stuff cut into the top layer. Top layer's got all the attention, and
Yeah.
the base layer is really just for fray. And you'll see here as the video goes on, when it comes out of the wash, this is fray central on this one.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
it's got the max amount of like bloomage, if that's even a proper term, to show
Yeah.
how well this exposed edge applique comes out. And again, to also reiterate, cotton canvas
About to ask.
only. You cannot use a blend, you cannot use poly. uh so any of that tackle twill stuff, none of that stuff. This has to be 100% cotton canvas.
I was going to ask. It
Yeah.
looks very coarse. It almost looks like a duck. It's really
Yep.
heavy
It's
canvas,
very heavy. Yes.
very heavy, very coarse. And I was like, well, that must be because we're looking for that, as you call it, bloom, which we're talking about the
Yeah.
fraying at the edge, the fraying and curling that happens when you launder and treat this stuff. So let me go ahead and start this back up.
Yep.
There we are. So let's go ahead and let this run so you guys can see this again. Yeah, those repair stitches are just awesome decorative whip stitch. You've done them probably manually, I'm assuming, but you could also use a column with whip stitch and with
Yep.
feathered edges would do the same thing if you were doing it, except for you wouldn't get that randomized spacing unless you were using spacing in the tools.
Yep.
But yeah,
S-
super,
s-
super interesting.
so the repair stitching has two schools of thought here, and one of them is, you see there, like the beans kind of laying all over and crisscrossing over each other. One of them is the strategy is like, if you're taking a letter that's falling off and
Yeah.
you're putting it back into a sewing machine, and you're
Hmm.
trying to, you only really have one stitch, back and forth kind of a thing. Looks like we're looping now, but
Hmm.
we'll just talk over it. It's fine.
That's fine. Yeah.
But and so you have that school of learning, and then you have so the whip stitch we talked about, and I did punch it as a column, Eric, and I
Oh, you
think I probably,
did.
yeah,
All
and I
right. All
told
right.
it to just do a 5 pass probably on one side of it, and then just leave it as the 1 pass on the other side of it. And then I did the jagged edges,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I told it to give it a range of density.
There you go.
So everything's random. I mean, it's within a comfort range, but it's random.
Okay.
Now, the only thing different from that technique, the column, and the way we used to do it at Abercrombie, is we would multiple pass both sides. And the reason
Mm,
why we did that is because the software we're using only let us do both sides. So
got it.
totally different settings in that regard. But I can speak that the hand stitch feature in Wilcom, for example, and I know a lot of softwares do this now. You can choose basically both sides. It's just a matter of which tool to use for you to get there. But
Well,
when
certainly, I will say
yeah,
in shortest, you can feather both sides, and
yes,
change the percentage of feather on both sides. So feather is
Yes.
jaggedness, is, it's called different things. You can
Yes.
also use, if you were looking for differences in density, you could also use different versions of gradient density would work as well
Yep.
to kind of give you spacing randomly. Or honestly, I'll tell you what I often do is just hammer that sucker with a manual tool,
Why not?
especially if you're doing just a
Yep.
few pieces of a small repair stitch like that. You know what a bean stitch is, do it yourself, like with your own tools,
Yep.
and then you can change direction, and it's like you can change angle and vector, like which direction you're heading, the way someone might do if they were hand stitching something back on
Yep.
inexpertly. I'm sure. But yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely right. And the other advantage too to doing something manual is that you have control over not allowing your penetration points to always hit the same spot.
Precisely,
And
yeah.
this is going to help you out. Like, see, a woven like this heavy canvas, you're pretty much going to get away with murder doing whatever you want to through this fabric.
Yeah.
But I always like to err on the side of caution, where you want your penetration points to just be, especially when doing like repair stitches, something's supposed to be messy anyway.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, you want to try to not hit the exact same holes because you're trying to avoid the gape. You're trying to avoid any of those really excessive holes that you didn't need in the first place. So if you can offset things or splay however you need to do it, but it will add a really nice hand effect to what you're doing. But
And we've got a couple
anyway,
questions. I'm actually going to manually, while
yeah.
we're here, I'm going to scoot us up and leave this running so we can actually enjoy the video while we're asking questions. Got a couple quick questions here that I think are useful. So let's go ahead and grab this. We already talked about the layers of canvas. Doug asks, is the grain of the canvas at no angle? And yeah, that's just straight horizontal vertical, right?
Doug is right. I did this I did not put this on a bias. It's just straight up 0 degrees. I think the biggest reason why is because this specific canvas I wanted to use, and I didn't have enough yield to turn it 45
All right.
and run it that way, or I probably would have. Plus, this is a great example when you see it come out of the wash here of what happens when you don't turn your canvas or twill at a 45 and you run it, how stringy it gets. I think that's something that you don't really know until your first time. And let me tell you right now, if you did like an order of like 144 of these or 72 of these, and then you got them all out of the wash and you just realize that you have a whole nother day of trimming strings, you're
Yeah.
gonna be upset with me. So I'm hoping that this will show you. I only did like 1 or 2 samples for this. That will show
Yeah.
you that you really got to put that thing at a 45 is permitting the yield for that.
So we're talking about yield. It's how many pieces can you get out of the existing whole fabric. One of the other terms you'll hear people talk about is nesting.
Yep.
Nesting just means how many cuts can you get out of an area, and some softwares out there are available that will take all your vector cutting lines and auto nest them into whatever area you have on your cutter or whatever area you have on your piece. So if you hear those terms, that's just a couple of terms from doing cut work. I mean, I've done a fair amount of it for different reasons, both in print and embroidery. So certainly auto nesting. Sometimes you go and grab stuff. In fact, there's some open source nesting tools if you really are cutting a lot of stuff. And you're trying to get yield where you can turn the thing on the angle, tell it what area you have in your cutter, and it will handle nesting all the stuff together. The problem that might be is if you're using things for like pre-spaced lettering, it'll take all those letters and jam them as tight as they can get somewhere, and sometimes it doesn't respect how you might want things to lay out. Or if you wanted to do a layout, sometimes you elect to have less yield so you can stick down a layout and have everything, multiple pieces all
Yeah.
put together before you go. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a couple of those.
It's pretty typical to have these big letters
Yeah.
not cut on a bias, basically just because it's a little bit different than, let's say, tiling a floor where you can still use those corner pieces. You can't with this. You're going to chew up a ton of fabric with big huge numbers or letters by turning them on a bias, because you can't
Yeah.
use that fabric. But ideally, yes, if you have the space and the yield offering, yes, please. It's gonna, again, I only had to make a couple samples, so I'm gonna trim some strings, because sometimes the customer likes the strings, and if you had
Oh
cut it on a
yeah.
bias, then you can't offer that because you won't string.
Well,
So
and it also sometimes
yeah.
when you want it to be really grungy, really fringy, then absolutely you don't want it on the bias because it will never really unravel that far. Like it does kind of block it to some degree.
Yep.
So we have a couple of comments. We'll just go ahead and grab comments. Barb just says that's really cool. Like to use a different stitching, whimsical, grungy look. Yeah, there's applique is not one thing. You know what I mean? I'm going to show you the most commercial, clean, boring applique on earth in a minute here, because I was doing super corporate stuff that was absolutely had to be clean. But this is kind of where I live. You know, I like this stuff a lot. If I were wearing something myself, I'd wear one of Joe's pieces. Let me stop that. Actually, let's. I want to back that up just a second because I want to see. There you go, guys. That's that stringing. You can see
Yep.
right in the inside corner of there how stringy that is. So we have a couple other comments here while we're going for it. We got a question from DJ Kev. How heavy does the canvas applique add to the garment? So does it? I'm assuming you mean does it really distort or hang differently because of that heavy double layer canvas?
Yeah, it I probably wouldn't want to do this on, any kind of jersey, lightweight jersey t-shirt material. And if I was, I'd probably reduce this down to one layer. Um, but on a sweatshirt, I feel like, which is what a lot of these originally were supposed to go on.
Yeah,
Just keep in mind that this heritage look, this vintage heritage look, was really designed to mimic the 40s 50s style of varsity letters, because in those
yeah,
days, it wasn't, the technology wasn't as advanced, I guess you could say, as we have today, but they still did it anyway. and
yeah,
and it was, and of course, if you had your letter sweater back in those days, it could have been your mom or your dad's. I mean, you
yeah.
didn't, it
Sure.
could have been passed down. This is the whole point of making something look vintage, is that it was something that, you could, it could be an heirloom. And it was back when garments weren't so, throwaway culture either. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
for sure.
made
For
to
sure.
last a long, long time. So it was very common for, I mean, aunt, a mother, or grandma to take your partially falling off letter because, you got in a scuffle down by the soda fountain or whatever, and you would, run some extra stitches around the outside of
Yeah.
it to help hold it on.
Well,
And
the funny thing is
so,
that that's like this is
yeah,
like the extreme, almost cartoon version of real, yeah, of a real
yeah,
process of something becoming,
it's
a
very,
well loved piece. Really, it's
it's
like the most.
very, it's very exaggerated.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very exaggerated. It is because I even used to talk about this when we would offer people distressed stuff. I would call something either distressed or destroyed, and I think I might have gotten that from stalls. They had options too, where you could be like, you could get distressed letters or you could get destroyed letters, and we're
Yeah,
verging on destroyed here. These are
yeah,
really heavily distressed.
yep,
But I'll say this, and I'm with Marianne on this one. She's coming out of Santa Fe. She said, 135 bucks is the cost I saw with a piece like this with the look of this in a store in Arizona. And I say,
yeah,
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely, all day long. And especially the funny thing is, add that to some brand recognition, something that people, you know, see as a brand that's
yeah,
desirable, and it's more than that. It goes even higher because of kind of
yep,
the concept of it. Now we have this from Barb, and I would absolutely say yes to this question. She says, I know you did screen printing, but I wonder if a grungy DTF print on cotton canvas cut with laser would have a similar effect. The one thing I'll tell you guys about DTF, it's going to be a little shinier. It's an adhesive. So you're going to be even more desirous of using like half tones and letting the color of the garment come through, because DTF, if you have solid color in DTF, you're not going to get this kind of washy look that you're seeing in this green where it's absorbing, it's in the fiber a little bit. DTF isn't going to do that. It's going to sit on top. Now it does stick down, and if you use half toning or some sort of toning, you can let garment colors come through, but DTF is on top of adhesive when you do it. So direct to film, that's the kind of printing we're talking about. There is an adhesive layer like a transfer that's printed at last. You can let a lot of the garment show through and it's better, but the more solid the color at DTF, the more shiny, the more transfer like it can appear.
yeah,
That's not 100%. You can do things with texture, and we can do things with texturing sheets when you press and stuff to make it look better or look more textured, but it is shinier. So that's the one thing I would kind of caution on that.
yeah, yeah. The textured sheets really help out a lot. Those Teflon,
They do. They do.
at least it'll knock 30% of the shine down, on the first tap, and it's not too bad. And of course, you can experiment with the angling that too, and it makes the surface look a little more screen printed. But that's a good question. Like I said, I haven't tried the DTF yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it can it get in the corners of fabric that has a relief to the surface? I don't know. I haven't tried that. So you're only,
Yeah.
like Eric said, you're only as good as the adhesive when it comes to DTF, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I don't see why it wouldn't work, especially if you build the distressing into your artwork to begin with,
Yes.
I don't see why it wouldn't work, and why you couldn't do it with this. And the fact that this fabric is canvas, you're not really going to have to worry about it shrinking. So you could potentially add the
Yep.
ink after the letter's been cut if you want to be adventurous in that regard. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that could happen in that regard. Yeah.
Oh, totally, totally. And
Yeah.
honestly, I would say, by all means, I would try it. You have DTF access. You want to buy yourself some transfers? Go for it. I know I'm intending to when I get a chance to do it. I would just say, absolutely, the one thing to know is that texture is going to be the biggest thing you're working against or with. Honestly, that's really what it is, and it's all digital prep. When I've talked to folks like you guys know on the Tubular Guys show, we have Dane Clement on. He does art prep for stalls, and he is a longtime designer. His biggest work with DTF, what he's constantly stressing for people, is to do that prep, do that toning, release yourself from having big slabs, and open up as much as you can. Use garment color, use fabric color, or substrate color, whatever it is behind that print as much as you can if you want to get rid of that kind of transfer look too. But we
Yep.
have another couple of questions. Scott from Sunrise asks, is there adhesive between the layers?
I don't remember. I think not, because the letter's so big and heavy, it's not going anywhere. As soon as it
Mm-hmm.
starts that first run stitch, it's not going anywhere. I mean, it's staying put. Plus, I don't think I did 3 millimeters. I think I probably did like 5 or something, or maybe 6 on this. So that human error at that size, even if it shifts a little bit, you'd never know. Plus,
Yeah.
once it
Yeah.
curls back, you'd never know. So the right thing to do, yes, is to use a
Yeah.
little bit of adhesive, because it's going to wash away anyway. Just use a water
Yeah.
base, a basting spray or something, and it'll be fine. But honestly, yeah, I think I made a couple of shortcuts because I just want to get it done. But
Yeah, it's
yeah.
small run stuff. Sometimes you do that. I mean, that's just how it is.
Hmm.
The one thing I'll say you shouldn't do is let your fingers stay in there while you're running.
Yep.
If you now, did I used to hold down appliques all the time? Absolutely. Should you do
Sure.
that? Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Be better than me. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't put your fingers on the machine. Our
We used to
machines
have
didn't have any of those brake sensors that would stop them when you had your hands in them. So we
yeah,
did all
we
kinds of dumb stuff.
we used to have this is back before we were punching in house, and we'd be sewing out samples, and we'd see like one of the sides of the, let's say, the zigzag stitch just wasn't quite going over the edge like we wanted to, so we'd go to the opposite part of the frame and we'd pull the fabric that way while it was running
Yep.
to like cheat and get
Yep.
it to, just because the back and forth with the digitizer process was just, I can't do that. I have to just get this thing done. Or I'm taking letters back off and cutting them back down to put them
Mhm.
back on and keep going. I'm like, that's why we brought all the punching back in house. But
Of course, of course. No, I
yeah,
and honestly, as the digitizer, when you're doing like one big jacket back piece and that's it, yeah, no, we would hold them or slow the machine down.
yeah,
Slow the
big time.
machine down because it's not catching enough meat on that
Yep,
applique. That we used to do that all the time. Slowing the machine down will slightly widen your stitches out, reduce the pull, and allow things to relax. And that's just true.
yep,
We have a couple other comments here. Doug says textured craft paper really helps reduce the shine. Yeah, heat pressing DTF with some textured paper or a texture sheet can really reduce shine. Absolutely. We have a comment from Brian here. So Brian used to do a lot of cut and sew and commercial tackle twill. And he said, as someone who has pulled a squeegee and done commercial tackle twill, I shudder at the imperfection. But as a designer of things, I love this. My take might be less extreme, but this is super cool. Yeah, no,
hmm,
but doing traditional tackle twill, would you allow for this much slop? Absolutely not. Traditional tackle twill letters are line perfect, picture perfect on the edges.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's a very similar process
yeah,
as far as registration, placing your tack lines, everything else is very similar. We're just going to the extreme of distress here. But yeah, Brian's cut and sew stuff, that is the original stuff. Like I said, that's the way that things used to be done. And shoot, back in the day, it was manual placement, and you're not using embroidery machines. You're just tacking things down with zigzag way back in the day.
yep,
That's how it used to be. So certainly there's all manner of commercial versions. I know I'm about to show my stuff too in a minute here, and it's absolutely just it's satin cover edge, so it's not even zigzag edge, it's full satin cover edge, and it's absolutely machine perfect and straight lines. So there's all of these are available. The medium isn't the look. That's the thing about this too. You could make this, you'd use these tools and these media to do any manner of looks, from distress to clean, from corporate to kooky, whatever you
yep.
want to do. Those things are all available. So we got a few more comments, and we'll go ahead and walk these out. We'll go ahead and get on to some other stuff, and I also would love to show some of the other things out of your deck of images, because we've got some finished images. We've got some of the other elements that were there, some of the whip stitch
Yeah.
stuff and the lettering. So I'll pull that up in a minute here, but let's go ahead and go to the last couple of comments on this before you get rolling. Um, Marianne says, and this is kind of funny, us crafters buy canvas at the hardware store for our crafting. Really trending. Hey, man, wherever you get your canvas and it holds
Sure.
up. Yeah, that's. I know people always ask me that back in the day. They'd be like, "Oh, well, I did. I used to do these appliques sometimes with textured materials. I did this like snakeskin style one that I threw inside of a lizard on this jacket back, and they're like, "Oh man, what embroidery company did you buy that from?" And I'm like, Joann's. I ran over there and grabbed it because we had to do the job overnight, and I didn't want to put any more work into the digitizing, and I needed texture on a jacket back that used to be a left chest. That's what happened. Overnight, I had to do this big lizard, and I thought, it would absolutely look great. Textured applique, and that was it. It was horrible. I wouldn't necessarily do it again because I used a drag knife cutter to cut like a very rubbery applique material. You want to talk about a slop, really large cover edge on applique? That drag knife was stretching that rubbery material no matter how I masked it down. And you just had to have some slop. You had to have some extra room inside the outside edge of that applique for it to work. So sometimes it's just how it is. Where you get your
Yep.
materials is where you get them.
Yep.
A couple pieces here. Brian also says, I have to wonder about using this distressing as a bottom layer, then top stitching something cleaner like a logo. Does mixing the style work? Yeah, absolutely. I know both of us have done that.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Distress stuff underneath, especially distress patch with a slightly cleaner thing on top. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we also have Don't Cross Our Line says, what was the material you were cutting the fabric on in your laser bed? And is it better to cut fabric on the honeycomb bed in laser cutters? So what was under the bed? And actually, that's a good time for me to kind of move over and grab your, you've got some info.
Yeah. So what I'll say about that is, so that particular laser I built to my spec. I mean, I didn't build the module. I bought the module, but most of these lasers, the carriage assemblies, the rails they roll on, these are all things you can just buy on Amazon. There's no secrets. And after doing so, because I wanted, you could just about pretty much buy a small tabletop style kit and then just buy longer rails, and you'd have essentially what you want. But what I put on the bottom of mine, because I'm well, I don't want to say lazy, but just I don't like to scrub all the soot off of there. You see how much cutting I had done before I did this 3/8 on there. That's just a piece of white powder coated aluminum I get from my sign supplier, and I have it cut to the bed size. And when I get tired of looking at it or it starts affecting my cuts, I flop it over, and then I just go get one of the 6 sheets I have out back, and I put it back in there, and I just keep going. So that's what I do. Now, going back to the question about the honeycomb, I really only use honeycomb if I'm worried about flare ups, if I need the air to be pulled out from the bottom side differently. But I have very, very little blowing out on the backside with the flat bed style. So I just leave it like this. But if I'm trying to cut something very specific that's not twill, felt, canvas, then I will introduce the honeycomb and reset my height a little bit to see if I need to adjust it. But for the most part, I really only use honeycomb if I'm trying to control the smoldering factor of a material that's typically sensitive to the fire. But that's me. I know other people would like to use honeycomb for various things, but I don't do a lot of etching. I don't do a lot of. I'm pretty much just cutting 100% in mine.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I've seen all of the above. I know
Yeah,
certainly I've seen all of the above. I've done a lot of laser cutting. Mostly I've done a lot of, like I said, old school drag knife roller cutting. So for me, I'm have to let the rest of you laser guys who know better than I do tell me.
yep,
Though I
and
will say, having worked with some laser folks, I have seen somebody start a fire in their bed.
yeah, this is
So you
so
do have
not
to watch
cool.
that. The scorching, the fire can happen.
Yeah,
So do start slow, be careful,
yeah. If
use
there was one
fans.
one material I would say to absolutely stay away from at all costs for safety is they do make a cotton felt, and it is just that it is like fire starting material, and that's how they should advertise it. Doesn't mean you can't cut it, doesn't mean you can't be successful with it, but
Yeah.
I just don't think the risk is worth the squeeze on that one. I just don't think so. They've got such way far more safer materials out there that feel just as good as cotton, like a rayon felt, rayon viscose blended felt,
Yep, yep.
and that's a far safer and better material to use. It's really nice.
Oh, and just for as if you guys need to hear this, the other thing is people who want to cut PVC vinyl, yeah, don't do that. If you cut polyvinyl chloride, you will release chlorine gas into your face. Essentially,
Yeah,
you're going to absolutely so plastics,
yeah,
rubbers, things like that. You absolutely need to be either extracting or not bothering. Laser cutting
yeah.
on that stuff can be pretty hazardous to your health. So
Yeah, your extraction unit
yeah,
is so important. It's
yeah,
so important. So when I put, because I have it in the spare bedroom here in the house, and I bought your normal, what is it, 400 CFM extraction, and then I was so paranoid about it, I just doubled it. So I have two of them that pull, and if I accidentally left a piece of paper inside the laser cutter, the bed there, it will actually pull it and pull it across and suck it in the vacuum and pull it outside and chew it up, and it makes a hell of a noise, and it really wakes me up, I'll tell you.
so yeah, be careful with this stuff, guys.
Yep.
No, here's one of the other pieces I wanted to show, and I've been showing you guys kind of like the entire print a little bit, so you can see here's the entire print with that wash print we talked about earlier. That kind of, as you said, a very low percentage kind of solids ink that was
Yeah.
done here, and then of course you've got you've got the Denko lettering that's done with a little bit of jitter to it.
Yep.
In once again sewing thread, and then you've got another repair stitch that's done on the edge of the pocket, so it looks as if it's a physical repair for the
Yes.
pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up a little tighter as you guys can take a look at that. So once again, there's that Denko, and you can
Yep.
see that you've got, I would assume you've got just a little bit of jitter on your
Yep.
edges there, a little bit of feathering.
Yeah,
Walk us through it.
multiple passes. I think this is maybe 3 passes on one side of it, but you just adjust the density as such, and it pulls it all back in. And I anticipate for a little bit of shrinkage as well after the wash. So when you first start off, you're going to see a little bit extra daylight through there during the actual sewing process, but after the wash, it washes up real nice and dense like that.
The other
So
thing to notice, folks, you can see in that, and if you're in the stitch artist world, we call it a whip stitch. But
yep,
you might see it called multiple passes, and like in Wilcom, but ours is kind of called a whip on the column. You'll see down here. I'm thinking you got what, seven or nine on the
yeah,
repair stitch
yeah,
probably looks like. So yeah, 7, 9. You're gonna find, guys, it's odd numbers. Why is it odd numbers? If you're traveling from one place to another in an embroidery, it's always going to be odd
an odd
numbers.
number.
If it's
Yep,
even number passes, that's why they don't exist, because
yeah,
they'd have to come back to the source. So yeah, that's why you see 3, 5, 7, 9. Just so
yep,
you know, people who ask me before, they're like, I don't quite like the 5 thickness, I want to go to 4, and I'm like, you're going to have a real hard time with that unless you do it
yep.
yourself.
That
So yeah,
logistically impossible, but you
logistically
can.
doesn't work if you're starting one place
Yeah,
and ending another, but you
yep,
can do it manually if you wanted to. You can double back over something if you feel like it, but that's, once again, that's into manual territory. But you can see you've got some really nice massing that happens there, and then when we kind of zoom out from the entire thing and see the piece, you got to love how that repair, and I almost like to look at it zoomed out like this. You have to look how that repair really does look like, hey, the pocket started falling off and we've got something
yeah,
going on, but the high contrast of the thread really does kind of tie it in with the rest of the colors and the repairs that are up at the top. So that's really cool. So yeah, man, that's a great piece. I
yeah.
absolutely love it. I don't know if there's anything else you really wanted to kind of highlight here.
Nah,
Actually, let's
if there
show some
was,
of the multi-pass stitching real quick.
yeah, if there was one more thing on that shirt, it would take the entire podcast to
Did
talk about this silly thing.
on my end that has audio. I don't know if you're getting the audio.
No, no, no audio
Okay,
on my
good.
end.
I was
Yeah.
getting full audio, so I got blown out
You
there.
got
Sorry, guys.
blasted, I'm
I
sure.
got
Yeah.
blasted. That was a headphone warning for real. Okay, but you can see the multi-pass stitching here, folks. Just kind of, I love to show that because it's like that's all multi-pass stitching is. That's all whip stitching is. It's slightly offsetting it, and if you have this in your software, it does it manually or automatically instead of manually. It will slightly offset penetration points at the end and create these mass stitches that look like a large floss. Is really
Yep.
what we're trying to emulate here.
Yep.
So very cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of
Very cool
fun,
stuff.
and of course the payout was,
Oh, of course. I mean,
was amazing.
the
Yeah.
final piece is just really great. So go ahead and show
I
that
did,
again.
and then going back to, I don't think this was much more than maybe a 7-ounce fleece. It wasn't 10, I promise that. It was
Okay.
a pretty normal weighted fleece for for its weight. And so this entire thing was one sheet of wash away backing for the back of it. I
Wow.
didn't need more than that. It did very well.
Well, that's the other thing to kind of know. If you guys are doing something where you want it to be super, super tight, sometimes when you wash stuff away, if you have just wash away stabilizers, you'll see a little bit of loosening of thread, but not a ton.
Yeah.
But you will see a little loosening. So if that's
Yeah.
something where you're doing something extra, extra tight, because I've done this where I wanted something to be very, very clean and tight, and I did full wash away and found that some of my stitches are a little bit loose. Not a game ender, and especially on something like this where it's full distress on with a heavy applique, it's great. Then you
Yeah.
really have no hand to the background of it, so it's
Yeah.
nice. The only hand is the material itself. Though I'm
Yeah.
sure this has enough of a hand with that double layer canvas, though those
Yeah.
still probably pretty flexible.
This is definitely one of those designs where, you know, you start to kind of explain what you want to do, and you kind of have to tell the customer, you got to just trust me. It's going to be good, but but brace yourself, because it's going to be something you've never seen before, you know,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
these are
Yeah.
trust the process pieces for real. But this is
Hmm.
why, and I know I've said this a million times, folks, and I know you guys have been around enough to hear us talk about it. Um, by all means, you need to run samples, and it's not just because you need to be better at your process. You need to run samples and hold on to it and do self-directed projects so that over time you have a chance to do this kind of stuff and show this kind of stuff, so that when people come around and ask you for something interesting and new and what have you, that you have this option to give them a real look and a real feel of the stuff that is going
Yeah.
to, that needs you to trust the process, because that's the thing. We can trust the process, your customer might not.
Yeah.
So you do have to give them something to hold on to. I mean, did you
Yeah.
do a lot of spec stuff when you were first doing this kind of work for people, or that was really A&F where it was development and it was all kind of spec, because until they did production
Yeah.
it was all spec?
Yeah, we were moving so fast in those days that we, you know, our ideas sometimes would outrun our pace to be able to execute.
Yeah,
We knew we wanted to do it, but, you know, we just didn't necessarily know what it was going to take, and so we would just start diving in, working with
yeah,
the factories and saying, no, here's your screens, here's your, you know, here's your dot pattern. This is what we're thinking. We hope this will work. This is our best educated guess. And we'd have two avenues. We either throw one at the factory
yeah,
and hope and pray, or we would do our best to develop it in house, which is what the whole R&D department was built for. And then we were actually giving them cohesive formulations. And then, of course, you know, me and my team, we'd fly around the world and teach these formulations to, you know, the factories, because that proved to be a far better partnership, not just helping the process, but now the factories would understand at a better level that the type of vintage look that we're going for, instead of just, you
yeah,
know, is this what you want, like this, maybe, I don't know, there's just, you know, it's because there's
yeah,
only so much FedEx International you can do before it's like, okay, they don't get it, or hey, they nailed this one, you know. So it really was, you know, kind of a muddy process. But like I said, in those days we were moving so quickly. uh you know, there was a lot of happy accidents in those days, for sure.
sometimes that's the only thing you can do, honestly,
Yes,
is to
yes.
try this stuff out. We have a couple people just kind of got some nice praise, so I like to always share that. Very nice piece. I really
Thank
like
you.
the piece.
Yeah,
Of
thank you.
course, love the outcome from
Yeah.
Joanne. So yeah, and of course, fantastic. And Barb says, "I love experimenting." And yeah, I think that if you don't love
Yeah.
experimenting, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, Barb sounds like she's got enough firepower back there to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, that's what
So
she's saying. She's got
yeah.
her CO2 and diode lasers vented to the outside. She's already
Hmm.
ready to rock. So you're
Yeah,
ready to
she's good
cut,
to
man.
go.
Get some
Yep.
scrap and get it rolling. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
honestly the best thing you can do with any of these processes, no matter what it is, especially if you
Yeah.
already have the production, is to try it out. And in fact, what I'm going to say is with the sublimation, um, our entire side of this thing that I'm about to show you, we were doing this work for a big real estate company. It's called Keller Williams. You'll know because I'm going to show you the logo in a minute. But Keller Williams has these big parties that they do. They are big conferences, but they do these big party at the conference called the Red Party every time they do these conferences. So everybody wears gear. Unlike every other real estate company, and here's the funny thing, we did them first. That was our first big real estate company. We started working with other real estate companies and found out that the corporate culture is not strong in a lot of these other companies. They don't wear logos. They don't wear really gaudy stuff that has all of the decoration on it. But Keller Williams is like, we are company first. We're a family. Wearing the red is a big deal. And so when we were doing stuff for them and we were selling at events for them, they would take all sorts of different stuff. We did rhinestone pieces, and I used to lay out custom hand designed rhinestone templates for, and we had Swarovski crystal. We didn't just do cheap rhinestones from China. We did the real stuff. And honestly, that stuff was really expensive to put together. Pardon me. But it was fantastic. The thing is, it sold like crazy. You couldn't keep it on the shelves. Anything that was new and interesting, we got away with. So we did lots of varsity stuff. We did cool stuff. And then there's this year where everything was plaid. Everything was super plaid. There was plaids on everything. There was argyles and plaids going everywhere. And during this couple of years, that's when I did a custom Keller Williams red applique. It was sublimated. Thing is, we had sublimation stuff in house already. We were doing sublimation for other work. It was mostly desktop. We never got to the point of doing really massive production, but we did have, we had the sublimation gear in house, and it was all about just testing it and trying it out that made this a viable option for a commercial setup. So honestly, the commercial setup for this stuff really was about kind of just saying, hey, this is available to us. Can we do it? And we just started trying. I got out there, tried it, did some pieces, and then figured out the process to make it work. So, it really does kind of behoove you to go out there, get on your own equipment, and see what that equipment can do and try and come up with these new combinations of stuff that can happen. So let's go ahead, and we have more comment from Lisa Shaw before we go, because this is about your stuff that I would love to get on there. She says, I'm loving the organic look of all you've done. Thank you for bringing up the manual option to really get the hand look. Yeah. I mean, hey, guys, stitches are stitches.
It's especially if you got the time. If you have the time budgeted to sit and actually do it manually, you won't regret it. It's just so nice, and you have way less trims because you're going to think about everything in a nice slow pace. It's such a nice tool. I love the manual tool.
Oh yeah, I know. The literal just tapping in individual stitches when you're doing something super distressed is hard to beat. Honestly, it's really hard to beat. So we'll go ahead and grab. I think I'll see if I can throw in the. I've got another gallery to look at. And we're going to show some of that stuff. So like I said, super basic stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, don't expect super fun retail out of this one. This is corporate. This is clean. This is not going to be as fun. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. But it was production work that we sold. So let's go ahead and grab that. I'm going to throw our stuff in as we had it before, and hopefully I can get this to actually behave. It wasn't
there. It is.
Here we are. So here's the piece, right? So this is one of the design concepts we were going to this trade show with. So this is really what it was about, right? This is custom plaid. I'm going to say one of the things you can notice about it that's a little troublesome is it's a little shiny, and on camera this was reflecting more than I'd like because we had a fairly shiny twill. Now, what I'm going to say about this particular client, it's just like everything else. Why was that okay? Well, because this client wanted everything shiny, glossy, ultra processed. So what I'm going to say is where the colors were much more saturated in this, you may see in some of the other images that are off center how those pieces are. It was not nearly so shiny as this or so bright as this. You can even see in the shadow up on the top of that K where it's a little more saturated. This red looking very pink, part of that is the shine on the surface. But these pieces were done as a custom cut applique. And I'm going to tell you this, they were cut after printing. And one of the reasons I talked about desktop sublimation so much is that I could not do what people would expect, which is a full bleed. This does have a bleed under it, but they were like, hey, why don't you just print a big span of the fabric? And then when you print a big span of the fabric, you cut it out and it doesn't matter where the cut lands. Because the ink prices on small run desktop sublimation are ungodly. This thing was using sawgrass cartridges on a desktop sized printer. You just don't want to print giant spans of fabric that way because it would be a tremendous amount of ink. So what I'm going to show you guys is how this was put together. And I've got some other options and things to show you, but this is what was actually going down. I actually had pre-pieced pieces here that were done with a transfer. So you can see kind of the spent transfer, and you can see this is actually the twill on the other side that's on a carrier sheet. Yes, these are nested, not super tightly nested, but they are nested on the sheet. And these pieces were done individually, and you'll see that there's just a small bleed. What do I mean by that? There's just a very small edge of pattern that goes outside of where the final applique would be and the final cut is. So I actually did this on the cut pieces. So what I ended up doing is kind of a hybrid process. I'm just going to kind of show you what's going on with this. Essentially, let me see if I can get some other images of it. You'll see I was cutting these out into sheet packs, but what we had ahead of time is this. The cuts were being done ahead of time on the applique material. So this is the applique material pre-cut. So it was cut into sheets that were sized to the printed sheet. And you can see up here, these are the transfers that are in this plastic bag here. So I had, and you can kind of see the cut lines. I pre-cut these and I made these as a piece that would then index to the transfer. So this is not the best way. This is the way that we found out to do it at the time. So what you ended up having is this. Once we had this cut piece, this is twill down here on the left side, you could index the edges of that sheet to the twill, stick it into the press, tap it down there for the period of time recommended by the manufacturer for the sublimation inks, and off you go with pre-printed pieces, and they're printed just outside the border of the cuts. So we weren't spending all of that money on the rest of the transfer area, right? I'll show you something else in a minute where I did full bleed. Very similarly, that was done for a concept, and it was on rip-away heat transfer vinyl applique, which is a very, very different process, not cut. This is twill. I wanted it to be a lot more robust than that, but this is pressure-sensitive twill that was done on a sheet. So this is running through a roller cutter. Standard sign cutter, 60-degree blade, nothing particularly fancy about it. So this is done with existing infrastructure in the shop. Didn't go out and buy a laser, didn't go out and buy new materials, didn't go out and buy a printer. The printer, the stuff is all there and was in the shop already.
So it's
like
it's probably prudent too to point out that especially the way that you're controlling the pattern size here. I think that's important to point out, because yes, you can go out and buy some really cool fabric out there with in this case black and red, whether it's you want to get a Burberry pattern, or you want to various plaid patterns, but unfortunately we just don't have the two-handed control over ordering fabric. And a lot of these fabric stores, they put a inch scale on there to try to give you an idea what the scaling is, but you don't really know until you bring it in, cut out a letter, and go, okay, I got one bit of square of a of a red and a big huge chunk of black, and that's one letter of the K, and you realize that's not going to work. So it's good to point out that all this work that Erich has done to do this really is for the spirit of the scale. Because if you would have found that scale fabric to begin with, you wouldn't have needed to do all this stuff.
Not to mention, remember, part of how this was being sold was on site with people digging their hands through it. And I know this sounds terrible, but they had to be identical. Now, you don't always want that. Sometimes that's okay. You can have the pattern anywhere and have it shift. In this case, that pattern has to be in the same place on the K, the same place on that W every single time. Yeah. And it also needs to look continuous from the K to the W. So when I did the original piece, it was continuous across the span, and then I nested it after the fact. So you have to realize there's color control going into it. They wanted a specific color. We matched it. There is the pattern control. As you said, I had to make the pattern small enough that it fit inside of these really thin sans serif letters that were direct from their logo. So this is their actual corporate logo type. So this is not some font I selected. Believe me, I wouldn't have used that.
Right.
And then on top of that, we had to have this identical, because part of what would happen is if we had stuff that wasn't identical, because we had done distressed applique before, and some of it was not identical. The wear patterns were different. They were washed. People would pick through ad nauseum trying to find the exact one they want. And that's part of the thing that we didn't want on our end. And on their end, they also didn't like and wouldn't approve the print shifting all around. Yep. They didn't like that. So you have to realize that we're also dealing with approval on a corporate level too.
Yep.
So these are the things that are going on that are a little weird. In fact, what I'm going to do is bring up, if I can, I'm going to bring up Corel Draw and just show you guys. This is how the original prints were done previously. Before we did that final piece, before I separated it out and ganged it out into multiple pieces, this is what we had. So we started with a piece that was continuous with this pattern, and then I figured out how to individually create the two bled patterns that are in this piece. And I believe, I don't know if I've got a cut line on this one. This is the final output. But the other thing to notice about this, as I'm dragging it, this is a vector plaid. What does that mean? I was using this for multiple clients. I could recolor this plaid and each one of the colors that are in the plaid to any color I wanted and match it to PMS, Pantone colors for other corporate clients who liked this concept of these plaids. And by the way, I would have rather done full images or something a little cooler. I'm going to be honest with you. When they were all on plaid, I was kind of disappointed because I know from working on other stuff I've done. And in fact, I'll go back to that to the gallery and show you guys what the stuff I like is doing full prints. And I was doing stuff like this, the Albuquerque chili pattern that I did here, the red and green chilies, and I did a full bleed on sparkle heat transfer vinyl, ripped away the outside edge from the embroidery, and then I had pieces that looked like this. And this one was done with hot air balloons. Full color prints like this, photographic prints look so freaking cool in a piece like this that I wanted to do something a little wilder, a little more color, maybe something like these. And once again, these are full bleed, right? I have a full bleed that goes over the entire area of the applique. I went ahead and allowed for that in the ink cost. That's fine. When we were doing a tremendous number of these, and if I was doing, let's say I was doing this Albuquerque pattern and I was going to make thousands of them, when I went to print them as a matter of scale, I would do something much more like the KW design where I would have these bleeds where it's only a very small amount of bleed and it's enough to handle the cut. I would not do the full bleed and throw away, as you can see with on this piece. I'll go back up to like the Albuquerque piece. You can see that I'm throwing away this mass amount of printed vinyl. These are for samples and small run at high margins. It's not what I would do and not what I did do when it came down to doing this kind of actual production for larger numbers. Like I said, and I've got a few other examples of stuff that's similar here, but once we're doing these pieces and we're doing thousands of them and we're doing them for e-commerce and we're doing them at the shows, this version of that absolutely makes more sense to, especially because we were still doing them at the time on desktop with desktop inks that are very expensive for sublimation. Makes a lot more sense to do it with a small bleed instead. So yeah, the extra steps, and it's kind of funny. It's what Lisa said here, and I'll go ahead and kind of drop this out for just a second. We'll drop the screen share out. Go back to our normal layout here. Lisa says, trying to fussy cut en masse, holy smokes. You solved many issues with extra steps. Yeah. The thing is, I'm not going to tell you that this is the best way. The best way to probably do this would be to have, maybe even to have yards cut down, or to have this done with laser bridge, or to use lasers because it's a much cleaner process. These days, I could also do computer vision where I could put registration marks in the print and I wouldn't have to register the edges of a piece of cut twill slab. All of that stuff is ways that I handled it with commodity tools in my shop. And it's a lot of the ways that crafters do it. Crafters have the tools they have, and they tend to use them in inventive ways. Now, what I'm going to tell you is we upped the price on that and the margin was fine. It was not problematic, and it's standard applique with the satin stitch finish. The reason I'm not going to show you anything almost in software about that is because it is literally the vector edge with an inset satin stitch. There's nothing interesting about that stitch. It really is placement line, tack down, satin cover. That's it. The interesting part about that is understanding how to prep the art. So it's working with color, it's working with patterns, it's working with, in fact, I'll actually bring up one of the other things I'm going to talk to you guys about really briefly with sublimation is that sublimation, very much like embroidery, is a process with a little bit of fuzziness to it. Color management is a pain in sublimation. You can get it down to a science, but it does float a little bit depending on what you're.
Uh-oh. Looks like we lost Eric there for a second. He'll be back. Yeah, so we've got, especially what Eric was talking about, some of those sublimation moments where we try to, I've had all the same issues, right? Little fuzzy edges on some of the sublimation situations. But, what I really like about, especially on the sublimation side of it, is like you said, if you might have to color match, but you get to choose all those colors, which makes it just awesome.
Okay, all right, back in.
We're back.
We're back. Let me share my screen again. I have something to show you guys as far as the color management. I was talking about the fuzziness of applique and sublimation.
Yep.
And we'll keep this short. But yeah, I'll go ahead and bring this on just really, really quickly. Let's go ahead and add that to the screen
Well,
real quick.
yeah. While you're bringing that up, Eric, there seems to be a circulating tone that you and I always talk about, and that is what's the best way, to either dye sub or to print or
Yeah,
whatever. And yeah, it's what you have. That's the best
that's the
way.
first best way.
Because I'm gonna tell you right now. I mean, I I'm doing work right now. I currently work for a Lone Rock out of Salt Lake City, and they've got a laser bridge machine. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I have not had a laser bridge more than I've had a laser bridge at my
Yeah,
access, and I can tell you that I've done the coolest projects without a laser bridge, and I
yeah,
really
yeah.
wish I had access to one. But at the time, that's what it was. So, um, you use what you have. It's gonna make for a better story anyway.
Well, here's the thing: if you have a client
Yeah.
who's willing to pay for the thing you produce, and you are aware of the time it's taking, and you're aware of the material costs, and you price it accordingly, and they agree, nobody got hurt. It's
Yep.
fantastic. If you're making a profit at the price you need to make it with hand cut, in fact, here's the thing I'm going to tell you. I know a guy now, he eventually got lasers, he got drag knife cutters, he got UV printing in house eventually. But he started with 2 single heads in a garage. He eventually ended up with like a 3-car garage full of equipment still at his house, which is awesome. But he was doing stuff for car clubs, and he was hand cutting razor blade and scissor, hand cutting custom appliques on these
Sure.
backs, and it was beautiful stuff. In fact, one of my favorite ones he did was a Mexican poncho material, or it's like serape material,
Yeah.
and he had this piece done. And I'm looking at that material going, I don't know how much, until he got laser. I'm like, I wouldn't have put that under a drag knife for sure. It would never work. It would have frayed so badly you couldn't ever have made that thing. But
Yeah.
he adhered it to a layer with heat press, cut it by hand, and made these applique jacket backs that were just like chef's kiss, the coolest thing you ever saw.
Yep.
I mean, as somebody from New Mexico, I was like, man, I was dying. I wanted one for no reason because I had nothing to do with the car club.
I'm
But at the
still,
same time, it's just
yeah.
awesome. Just
I'm still
awesome.
hand cutting wax transfer prints
Yeah.
and putting them, because with the wax transfer going on a wax transfer that's been inkjet printed, going
Yes.
on
Yeah.
a piece of either twill or canvas, and I'm just heat pressing it because again it's I've already pre-pressed it, so
Yeah.
I want to throw that out there too. If you're trying to do DTF, if you're trying to do any kind of transfer, pre-press your panel, especially
Yes. Yeah.
if you're going to cover up the edges with a satin stitch anyway, then don't trouble yourself so much with the poly that is probably going to shrink anyway,
Mhm.
or get one that you trust is not going to shrink. You got to play with it though. And of course, how do you do that? Well, you print a grid of inch squares on there, and you measure it, and then you press it, and then you see how much it
Measure it
was,
down. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
measure again, and then you see what it was. Well, the cotton doesn't do it as badly. Certain weaves will, kind of show their colors, but these are things you could do. I can't tell you how many times I hand cut something because the process of put it over there, import from Illustrator, put in the layout, put the thing in there, turn the thing out, I could have had it cut already, and I'm only doing
Yeah.
like 1 or 2
Yeah.
samples. So I'll still hand cut, but I print myself just a little cheater line to
Yeah.
give myself a little bit. And while it's doing the tracing stitch, I'm over here, getting it
Yeah.
done. So I'm not
It
above hand
works.
cutting. Yeah.
It works. Well, on top of it, like I said, I never did. There's all the
Yeah.
applique and patches you guys ever saw from my work. The stuff that was on Breaking Bad, the stuff that was on Better Call Saul, the stuff that was on, all the stuff you guys like to look at and kind of think is cool. Everyone was cut on a drag knife cutter. And I'm going to tell you the other thing was, the original cutter I used, I had a Roland Cam 1. If you don't know what that is, you don't have as much gray hair as I do. A Roland Cam 1 had a parallel printer import. It was busted in a closet. They wouldn't give me my own applique cutter, but I found a secondary sign cutter that
Yeah.
was their old sign cutter. I hauled it out, got it working again, and started talking to it directly from my computer. And I rehabbed that sucker, put a 60-degree blade in it, and cut all my applique on like a 20-odd-year-old cutter at the time. It is now like that thing has retirement money coming. I mean, it eventually died, and I got a Graphtech, and the Graphtech was a massive upgrade. But we went to
Yeah.
Another drag knife for forever. We never used
Sure.
laser. Would I like to use laser now? Yes, I'm actively looking at lasers now because honestly, there are things that are going to be a lot easier once the laser is involved. Yes, there's scorching to work on. Yes, there's that, but there are just things that are a lot easier than trying to get things to cut. Because I remember cutting substrates where I'm having to do light passes 5 times with the drag knife to get it to
Yeah.
cut cleanly, or I'm having to adjust downforce pressure and oversteer and all this stuff to get cut corners. That kind of stuff, a laser just isn't going to, cause that kind of trouble. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. The tools that you have, and by the way, I sold all that stuff at profit, made tons of money. All the patches you've ever seen from my old company, all done that way. So this isn't just use what you have till you can get better. Now, certainly that's a great way to do it. Pay for
Yeah.
your next equipment by selling product now. That's a fantastic way to upgrade. But it is also that some of the stuff is you're totally capable of doing it without any extra work. And I'll show you that image real quickly just to finish that explanation about sublimation, and then we'll move on from that completely because we're running out of time, and I don't want to take us into like 2 hours for crying out loud. I mean, could we do it? Yes. Should we do
Oh
it?
yeah.
Absolutely not. So this is just to show you guys. Yeah, I do testing even with sublimation. Yeah, print out your colors, press on the particular material you're going to use. This actually was a pre-made patch, which you're going to find out. It's funny. This is a pre-edged patch because at the time I was doing pre-made patches and sublimating them after the fact. So from a company at the time, Enmart was the company. Ensign Emblem is the actual company that this is from. I printed out a big square full of color chips, and then I had this thing in front of me, and I started to select from them like a thread list instead of trying to mix colors because I knew for darn sure with the formulation of ink I had, with the colors that were on screen, the color chips that were in my personal palette, what color I was going to get when we printed after the fact on this white poly. So what it ended up doing is I essentially had spot colors I could now use in my setup of the art, and I knew absolutely what I was going to get. And I could also tune in colors from this setup where I could do these colors that were particular to the schools and clients and people I was serving. And I knew for sure what the formulation was. Also, another thing just to say, if you're doing sublimation, you can't get a good rich black, go look at, the term is designer black. You want a black that has color in it. People do 100% K black that will turn gray. And I know I say this every time, but let me tell you from having helped people many, many years with this particular problem and others, you want a high chroma black that's got a lot of solids in it, and you want color in it, not just 100% K. You want
Oh.
all 4 colors in it, or how many ever your your formulation uses. So if you've got other magentas and things in your formulation, whatever arcane colors your formulation has,
Yeah.
look up the mixture for a designer black or a rich black, and you're going to be a lot happier. Yeah, we got a couple more comments here, and then I'm going to show you guys the Embrilliance thing I promised you because I do want to kind of harp on it. It has a tool to make this very easy, especially if you're somebody who's printing transfers yourself. If you're printing transfers yourself and you're not, ganging and you're just trying to make a small bleed transfer, very much like the KW one I made manually. It's got a tool for that. But let me go ahead and show you guys a couple more comments here. We have one from Brian, this is absolutely, speaking of Brian's. I wonder how many shop owners think about making their own branded items, even a small run for staff. I don't see it often, but there's a small run use case. Absolutely. Staff shirts. And in fact, this is a common use case. This is what I always tell people. If you want to do a cool new technique, you'll get your employees excited. If you are working with employees, you'll work on that new technique together. You get them up to speed on the technique and make something they want to wear. If you do all that, especially when it's a trending technique, many employees have seen what cool trending stuff is out there and they want to make one. They'll come to you half the time. But yeah,
Yeah.
we used to let people, and that's the thing too that I want to tell folks. One of the best ways I ever handled doing shop shirts, especially for embroidery, I'm like, hey, we've got a reject, and you want to buy that reject, or if you want, or we have a new garment that just came out, you think it's really cool, you've been in the catalogs, you like it, I will buy you one if you put the company logo on it. I will buy you one if you put something cool to make a shop
Yeah.
shirt on it. That one's free. Or you want a reject, it just has a logo that got run wrong. Make a cool patch and use a cool new technique, and I'll hand you that art, and I'll let you spend the time on the machine doing it, and you can take that out of the shop today with you, and that's your new shop jacket. I don't care. And don't get me wrong, many people want to make their own stuff and they still bought it and what have you, but it's such an easy way to be like, oh, you want a new jacket? Cool. I'll buy you the newest jacket that came off the line. We're going to make a cool shop jacket today.
Yeah.
So let's figure out what you guys want, and we're going to make that up. And then especially if you're doing stuff like patches or DTF, where it's super easy to kind of do this on multiple substrates, you can let them have what they want and design something cool to make that work. So yeah, it's an absolutely great way to do it. And you now have a sample for your showroom or to show potential clients. I mean, you got to have that stuff. So let me
Yep.
go ahead and bring this up. I'm going to grab Embrilliance really quickly because I just want to show you guys, and I know I've shown you this before, but we actually have a print tool built into the Applique tool that you guys need to know, especially if you're doing like the stuff Joe was talking about. If you're doing like the wax transfer stuff, if you're doing, hey, even regular old school inkjet transfers, if you're doing white toner transfer printing, direct to film, direct to garment stuff, the stuff like that, you can use the direct digital output from this to work this stuff out. So I'm going to bring this up on screen real quick, and we'll just make this a very kind of short segment because I think this will work out. I'm going to do it live because why not? Let me see if I can get us back down into the color chips again, where we look like we're a toolbar for the software. In fact, you know what? Actually, I wonder if I could do is grab us. I'll do this. I'm gonna see if I can get you, Joe, and bring you into one of my screen share methods, so it's a little easier to see
Yeah,
because
no
this
problem.
gives us something bigger. All right, I'll bring Joe in. Give me just a second, guys. I know, live without even trying. I'm just gonna go ahead and drag Joe into here with me.
Hey, there you
So
go.
there we
Yeah,
go. We'll get you in there. It'll be a little weird, but it'll be okay.
no worries.
There.
No worries.
So
It's all
we're
good.
both there. Here, I'll crop Joe out like I do me. So you
There you
guys are going to
go.
see me set this up live because hey, why not?
Why not?
Why not? I like to live
Yeah.
dangerously sometimes because wow, nothing broke just 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right, so here we
There
are.
it is.
There's me and Joe. So here we are in front of Embrilliance with an applique. First thing I'm going to show you guys real quickly is this actually is a piece of another design. So I'm going to show you the design that I did earlier. This is one from a line that I did years ago called Ars Longa Vita Brevis. It's my line where I did a few different designs for this. Honestly, I did a bunch of them for magazines and then I sold stuff after the fact. But this is one of my pieces. And yes, it's done in reverse where I've got a lighter color instead of a darker color with a single color thing here. But if you guys don't know Latin quote, it means life is short and the art takes so long to learn. Right? Ars longa vita brevis. That's what that means, if you're wondering. Something to that effect. So yeah, life's short, but it takes a long time to get good. So I have a lot of skulls. You guys know I also have like the memento mori stuff. I don't know why. Yeah, so break me. I like making skulls. I can't help it. If I start drawing, if I take a pencil out and I'm not doing anything else, a skull will just come out of me. I can't help it. And I'm not even that much of a spooky dude, but I will for sure absolutely draw a skull if you leave me alone. So this is the piece that came from, and so this is directly out of a Stitch file. I yanked this out of a DST file. So what I want you guys to know is that I did not do any other kind of processing on this, aside from kind of setting it up for applique very briefly by taking the outer line of this piece. So that's the skull that we're looking at, done in a gray thread on red. We're going to go ahead and back that over to this piece, but you can see I've got this awesome print behind it. Now, in this case, this was literally a print from a jersey knit shirt, but it's a digital file that's back here. What I want to show you is that this is on an applique layer, and you can see that we actually have the full bleed image behind it. But what Embrilliance will do is actually produce you that kind of cut out piece. So let me see if I can grab my gallery again, and I'll show you guys what it actually produces. And I have this down here. This is what Embrilliance will produce for you: is a set up applique print that goes just outside to your cut line. So what you can actually do is output this as a transparent PNG, and Embrilliance actually gives you the bleed for this automatically. So instead of having that full image, you can put a high-res image behind something and then output a PNG like this and send that directly to your printer if you are trying to reduce the amount of ink that you're using for your transfers, or if you're trying to do something like I was doing with that KW, you can pre-lay it out. So I'm just going to show you what this is like and where that's located. It's not a tool that is up in the toolbar. The thing that sometimes people miss, especially in the Embrilliance platform, is that Applique has these awesome tools that are based out of the Applique color chip. So this is what I want to kind of show you really quickly. I have an Applique outline that's on this piece. So my top object here is an Applique outline. So if I were in Stitch Artist, you can see that it's actually on our Applique tool that is up here in the upper toolbar, and this is on Stitch Artist 3, but that's not where you don't have to be in Stitch Artist 3 to get this. In fact, I'll cycle through and you can see that Applique is available in Stitch Artist 1. I have an educator model that lets me cycle through the different levels. That is not something you guys can do. So, but you see the different toolbars going through. We have Applique tools here. I'm going to go back to Stitch Artist 3 just because that's where I usually live. But you can see that I do have a tool. All this is I took the original placement line and I created a vector line from it. I literally just did an outline path on it, and I created a vector line directly from it. So what we're seeing is that little applique tool here as the first layer. And what you're going to notice is, though we do have our applique settings here, it's not in these applique settings, but it's on the color chip. So if you click the color chip for an applique piece, you're going to see that not only does it say color here, but there's a secondary tab that says applique. And unfortunately, for some reason, my magnifier, my cursor pointer died as part of something I was working on before we started here, and it did not work. I need to reinstall that. But you'll see that this is set up as an applique position, but there's a little bar here that says image. And it has the ability to rotate the image. It has the ability to also save as image. And so the things we have, image button is our import, lets us import the image. The save as lets us output that PNG. So in this case, I'm going to take an image that I have here. Now, this is not a great image. In fact, I'm going to use kind of a terrible image if I can get it located again here. I had an image that I downloaded, this just red and green chili banner. It's kind of awful for what we're doing, but I'm just going to show it because I'm going to show you that there's all these tools to kind of manipulate the image. You can go ahead and take the image. You've got it in here and say, okay, now I've got this image and I actually have tools to manipulate it while I have that color selected. So I can manipulate the image itself. I can drag around. I can resize it, and I can rotate the image. So let's say that I want this to be kind of offset and split this skull between red and green chili. And yes, my poor little New Mexico self is still living in chili land. But let's just say that I want to, make this thing bigger, and I rotate it and try and get that alignment the way I want it. And then I'm going to scroll this up, and I want this to kind of split between that red and green chili look. Well, there we go. I have that red and green chili. I'm going to go ahead and scroll that out a little bit, size it up till it fits my entire piece. And what we can see is now when I zoom back out, it's automatically cropped that image. I have that already there. But the thing that I can do, again, I'm going to go ahead and grab my color chip. I've got my applique object. I'm going to grab my color chip from that, go to applique, and I say save as image. And I'll go ahead and just call that, two-tone chili. Why not? Doesn't matter. I'm going to throw that on my desktop. And I'll go ahead and pop that up in a second. What you're going to find is that is now a PNG file. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and you'll see what, as I open it up, and I'll drag it over onto the screen there, that what I ended up with is that clear-edged piece, right? So if I open up two-tone chili, and I'm going to go ahead and drag this in, that's what I end up with. So now I have that with a bleed that is just out to my placement line, and it goes underneath the edge of my actual satin stitch border. So what does that mean? I can now take this image and send it at scale directly to whatever kind of transfer printer I want, and I can put down a transfer that can now be used for a full color applique. So just wanted to show you guys that. That is built into your Embrilliance right now. It is not something you have to go get. It is not a new thing that's coming out. It is something that is in there that people just aren't utilizing enough. I just wanted to show that. So if you're right now using like desktop sublimation or transfer printing at home, or you are white toner transfer DTF, you actually can do that right now from any color chip that's in there. You can go ahead and grab that and put that applique set up on it and create your own color images that have that bleed and that crop. So like I said, just a quick thing. Just wanted to share that because I thought it was so awesome that it exists and that people kind of aren't getting any use or enough use out of it, at least.
Yeah.
Because that was that back in the day when Brian first made that was a project, a product unto itself. It just lives in the ecosystem as part of what this software does. And I think that not enough people get use out of it. And now that we've got DTF exploding and people bringing those printers in-house, I'm like, hey, here's another thing where you might get some use out of that instead of doing full bleed.
Yeah, so, I certainly can't speak for everybody, but I can tell you that at least in my career, taking artwork out of a software always has its risks.
Yep.
And this is a very important tool because at least in the past, if you're printing something on this machine, but you're cutting something on that machine, I mean, you really got to trust your machines because, at the end of the day, you're trying to make, you're trying to get the customer's end product to them appropriately in a reasonable amount of time. And so there's a lot of I won't say shortcuts, but because it's integrated, there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about. It's a very valuable tool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not the only software that does that. Plus, can you do that you saw me earlier, I did mine in CorelDRAW back in the day. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. If I had output my, my pattern and could have thrown that right into my embroidery software and kicked out a print, that would have been a lot easier than what I did because I had to do that manually. Now, I did it in Vector for a reason, and there's reasons why you do that. But this just allows that last step to be in the embroidery software, which a lot of people are more comfortable with.
Yeah, and in the old school ways, we would have... Yeah. We would have the vector file, which was it would have the raster in it. It would have everything in it. And then from there it would split to, okay, this is what's going to embroidery. This is what's going to print. and if either side of those departments had any issues with one or the other, they're going to have to work that out internally, because the vector is the gospel of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, but this really kind of helps,
Oh
encompass
yeah.
everything into one, which is really nice.
Let me show one more thing I'm going to show
Yeah.
before I finish up on that, just because because I've got a couple comments here where it's like, um, Barb says, "Oh, I didn't realize that featured in Embrilliance." Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that not enough of us are aware of it, so I want to make sure people know that stuff. Lisa also says a great way to create a mock-up. Yeah, you can also output a full version with stitches on it, just the way you would do any other software or any other design that you have in there using the utility export image. It will also carry that through, so you can actually see that image in a pre-made piece
Yeah.
without having to layer that together, which is kind of nice. And also, this is the thing I wanted to show. In fact, I'm going to show because Brian says this. The Applique tool also exports a cut file. So that means the cut file will be kept to size. So that's the other thing I wanted to show really briefly before you even commented, sir. You got it right after me. Great minds think alike, man.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and put us back over here for one more second, just to show you guys what we're talking about. In that same Applique tab that's there, you also have cutting over here. And in that cutting tab, you have the ability to inflate or deflate your cut line. And you can save or save all, and that saving allows you to save, SVG, FCM, studio files, plot files, HPGL, so even old school plotters. You'll have a file that'll work on just about any cutter
Yeah.
directly out of that from the color chip. And the other thing I'm going to tell you guys, the other thing that's crazy about that, I've used this directly on stitch lines. Now, it's not the most ideal, awesome cut line, but I've taken a file that was in DST format that didn't have a cut file with it, and you can use the placement line to create the cut file by using that menu that I just showed you, giving it a little inflation and outputting it from the stitch line. And I'm talking about a stitch file line, not from a vector line, not from a drawn line. So that is another tool where if you didn't know that was there, it saves you an immense amount of time. Like I said, other software may have, they have different tools as well. So I'm not saying it's not in your software. I'm just showing you this is one where I know that was something that blew me away, because I'm so used to, and I was a Wilcom digitizer for years, having to draw a new line. I have to take that line and go, okay, I've got a stitch line. Now I have to process that line into something, and then I can make a
Yeah.
cut line out of it. Don't get me wrong. May you want to do that if somebody made a placement line that's really crazy and you've got a lot of nodes, maybe. But if you're kicking out an applique and you just want to throw down a few and you've got a file that's already done, and you've got a placement line that's nice and clean, you can kick that straight to an applique cut, and it's actually not bad. I was really shocked, because
Yeah.
I'm the kind of guy who wants to draw it myself, because I'm a stickler. I want to control all my nodes. I do
Yeah.
perfect point placement and make everybody upset when they look at my files sometimes. I used to be a really sloppy digitizer. Now that I've been doing a lot of like fonts for other people to use, I'm doing perfect point placement and vector stuff and really messing around for sure. But yeah. So yeah, no, sorry, Brian. Absolutely, great minds think alike. That's exactly right. The Applique tool exports the cut files and keeps the size, which is nice. So,
Yeah.
and Carol says, which is true, Embrilliance has so many wonderful hidden secrets for those of us who don't read the manual.
when I
That's why you got to read the manual on your features.
when
But
I
yeah,
first when I first saw that, I was
yep,
like, "There's a manual?
yep, yep,
This is
yep, yep, yep.
great."
There's a manual. It's under the help
Yeah.
menu. There's a manual there entirely, folks.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. We are past time. We have gone into bonus time. We've gone into bonus time.
Yeah.
We're well and truly out of it. But I just want to say, Joe, thank you very much for sharing your pieces,
Thanks for having me. Yep.
and for all of your expertise, and also just showing us, like I said, such great options that we may or may not have seen or known about, and also giving everybody the encouragement to try it.
Yeah. Pleasure as always, and yeah, we'll have to feature some more crazy artwork where the budget wasn't a factor at all, and we'll feature that back again, because it seems to strike a lot of inspiration with folks, and that's what it's all about. So
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
absolutely. So, folks, the best thing to take out of this is that you too can do this. Try something
Yeah.
out, use the tools you have, and also, hey, even in a commercial sense, use the tool you have and price it for the time it takes. Find out. You don't know what someone will buy if you don't offer it. If you don't
Yeah.
ask, you can't get that price for anything. All right, folks, with that, that'll be the Takeup for this week. Thank you guys for showing up, and I can't wait to see you guys again next week.